Okay, so Indy, you've been in PPC for quite a long time now, spoken at a lot of different conferences. Recently, PPC Live UK. The one I wanted to bring you on the show for was all the changes happening with AI and automation. It seems like Google is releasing an overhaul every couple of months, if not every month or two, and surprising PPC. I really liked your presentation, all the information on how we can adjust, because a lot of people want to be stubborn and stick with all the manual and all the control, but we're forced to go into all this automation and AI and work with it instead of against it. So I wanted to dive into that and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've been in this industry for over 10 years now. So when I first started, we used to have to break out campaigns by device.
Yeah.
So literally three times the account sizes you'd see today. And it was around that time actually when Google made their first sort of shockwaves in terms of announcements where they said, we're going to bring out a new campaign type where we're not going to let you break out by device, and we're not actually going to let you bid adjust on mobile either. And and basically we all had to spend a good 6 months. We had a bit of notice. We had about 6 months to basically consolidate our accounts into one device campaigns. And I think since then, Google's been telling us what they've been trying to do. So they've been telling us with all these various updates over the last 10 years where they're moving to, and it's consolidation. Basically, trying to remove the hacks and the sort of, the efficiencies we've been able to drive by getting as granular as possible. Google have, they've certainly realized on their side of things that actually the path to scale and scaling their own revenues, but also businesses' revenues, is actually taking out the workload aspect of it. So bringing out things like RSAs, rather than the standard ad copies that we used to have, which trying to target against one keyword, having an
Yeah.
RSA cover multiple types of keyword combinations, and things of that nature, which I think every time these announcements have come out, you see the industry tear their hair out and scream, why are you doing this to me? But over time, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, actually, people have found actually the new way of working actually gives them more time back to work on strategy, to work on, what is the actual data we're trying to optimize to and plug into Google and actually get those outcomes that we need to get. So what we've lost in those, those efficiencies, we've probably gained in scale for ourselves, as well as obviously Google getting money off the back of it as well. So I think, yeah, as I say, over the last 10 years, we've been having these pointers like exact match no longer being exact match, broad match modified being deprecated. All these sorts of things have led us up to, and we kind of see why they've done it now. And I think what was a bit of a shock was probably this time last year, actually, when ChatGPT 3.5 was released.
Yeah.
Where and then the whole idea of generative search and how search is going to change over time, that timescale has probably been accelerated, and it's called, as you said, it seems now Google are bringing update out after update. I think they've been kind of forced to accelerate their own timelines. So they showed their own version of generative search, which is in beta in the US, and I think just been launched in multiple other countries as well across the globe in beta. You can see it's not ready yet. It's not there yet in terms of being able to replace Google search, but it's coming, and it might not come as quickly as we think it seems like it's going to come, but within the next few years, we're going to see a shift towards generative search as our number one way of finding what we want as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still entertaining to watch everybody, pull their hair out and freak out all over every social media every time there's an update. I mean, LinkedIn starts looking like Facebook, and then, it starts looking like Reddit, and they all just blend together. It's just kind of a stream of complaining. It can be entertaining. But there's, I want to kind of break down all the different things you mentioned and just kind of go one by one so people can get some really good points to take into their accounts right now and adjust. So I think off the top of my head, the one you mentioned, extended text ads, ETAs going to RSAs, responsive search ads. That's still kind of messy. And, we audit accounts and we see it's kind of all over the place, and people debate different things, whether or not to use the pin feature, which if you're not familiar with that, that's just kind of, headline one stays in headline one, or pin all three of them, three headlines and two descriptions. So you're mimicking the old ones. You do A/B tests like that. Do you max them out with full? I think it's 14. I'm obviously not a fan. I don't know what the number is, but all of the max headlines, 4 descriptions, and just load it up and do one of them. What are your thoughts on that? What have you seen? How to properly adjust to RSAs? How to A/B test, which it isn't really that. I mean, how have you seen to shift to that and have some control so you don't get a headline that has 3 call to actions, which technically it could. What are your thoughts on that, shifting towards it?
Yeah, I think it's a maximum of 15 and then 4 descriptions, as you say. So yeah, I think when it first came out, it didn't really make a load of sense, especially the way we all structured our accounts. So we used to like single keyword ad groups and all that sort of stuff. It didn't really make a lot of sense to have RSAs, but I think over time, with the release of this new version of Broad Match, which is more AI focused and matches to more or better queries than it used to back in the day, because it takes on a lot more signals than it did back then. It kind of does make a lot more sense, in the consolidation behind actually you don't need to break out your match types into different ad groups and campaigns as much as you had to before. And having them all in one campaign, using that with RSAs actually makes a lot more sense. But yeah, to your point, if you're not pinning certain headlines, you actually don't have any control whatsoever of what combination the messages come out, and actually trying to understand what's the right number of headlines you use and what those combinations are, along with all the descriptions, all the permutations, is a bit of a headache, particularly
Yeah.
from the agency side and work on multiple clients and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think I don't really have any sort of views on best practice, whether you should pin or not. I think every client is different, and I think every business is different. The messaging, the proposition, all that sort of stuff, along with how optimized your accounts are, and are you optimized to quality score and that sort of stuff as well. So I think always test it. And I think Google Ads experiments is probably the best way of doing it that I've found, and trying to test your assumptions as best you can, and doing that head-to-head test against each other, and understanding which is driving more efficiencies, but then also more scale as well, because Google will reward you to appear on more auctions if it thinks it's a better quality ad too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen some of them. We test all of them. We've tested mimicking the old ads, and you pin 3 headlines and you pin 2 descriptions and their position and just leave it. We've tested that. We've tested putting, and most, well, it depends. It's one of those things. You can't have a 100% rule across everything. We've tested that against one where we'll do 6 or 7 headlines and 3 or 4 descriptions and let the 2 run against each other. I mean, it's almost ad group to ad group and campaign to campaign as far as what's going to work. And I think that's the best takeaway PPCs can take. It's just, we always say that too. Go with what works and have more than one tool. I don't really like the hacks that come out, and it's usually not really industry experts. It's just kind of somebody that came out of nowhere saying, always pin, everything else fails 100% of the time. It's like, that's not accurate. Go with what works. Know how to pin it, or pin one, just the first headline, or do 7 headlines, or max it out with all 15. Know how to do all of them and rotate through and go wherever the data goes. I've seen maxed out ones beat the pinned ones, and it makes no sense. The maxed out ones are a mess. I don't know how they work, but the data's there, so go with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think everyone did that first when we had to make the transition from ETAs to RSAs. Is actually, how do we replicate how it looked in with the old versions of the ad copies?
Yeah.
I think over time that's become less impactful, and a lot of that is due to these updates. So the whole point of RSAs is to match up the ad copy as best as you can against all the different types of queries Broad Match now appears for. But also just the way people are searching is starting to change, and it started to change a few years back when Google announced voice of the year of voice search.
Yeah.
Which never really came. So I know a lot of people have Alexa and Google Home and everything, and I've got a few of those devices at home as well, but I don't really use them that much. But the way you would speak to those things in theory is exactly how people are typing to search for their queries now, and that shift and that mentality is going to become wider scale as people get used to using things like ChatGPT and the new versions of search as well, which are going to be based on generative search. So you're going to be typing how you would speak for queries. And actually what I'm finding now is trying to adapt copy to that type of searching rather than keyword based, having it voice based or voice search based in the ad copies is wielding better results.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The voice thing, yeah, that never really took off, and it was kind of a lot of blogs and news articles talking about how sort of a joke. I saw one of them. It said, "Okay, Google, that's enough." It's just like no, nobody wanted to do that thing, or Hey Alexa, or I don't know. I don't use them that much, but it was kind of, my wife used it to set a timer, like while cooking something, or I would use it. You do, what's the weather first thing in the morning, or she'd do it kind of the work schedule and line up everything, and you could talk to it. I think it in the US this was big. Cable TV did the remotes you can talk into, and there's commercials everywhere for that, and it's like, okay, show me movies with this actor, and the commercial, wow, it pulls up all my favorite Kevin Bacon movies. It's like, this is the best thing ever. He was in the commercial too, but people didn't end up doing it. Talk to their remote. It's like it already has. You can scroll through, and talking to Google, it's like you can type. The main thing I've seen it used for, I think we did this in another interview. This sounds familiar. It's almost just kind of the bar arguments. People around talking some social events. It's like, hey Google, what's the largest something in the world, or what's the record for this? It's breaking up an argument in a pub or something. It's kind of a stupid vanity usage.
Yeah, for sure. It's just not
Sorry, I didn't understand.
triggered
See, it
me,
hurt
right?
us. Yeah. I knew I'd trigger somebody's phone or something somewhere.
I could see it flashing. I was waiting for it to speak. Yeah, I don't think it's just not a very natural way of being human, right? It's like talking to a machine. It just doesn't feel right, which inherently it's never going to take off in that sense until it can mimic human interaction in reality. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I've talking about the generative search though. Excuse me. I've seen this comes up in search terms when they show them. Google's not really sure what they want to do. I've seen search terms with impressions and not clicks, which that's very generous. And then other times you see, a campaign got 50 conversions, and you pull up search terms. You want to do it the old fashioned way, load it up, grab those, put it in an exact match, maybe put them in a top converters, other campaign, or throw them in a custom audience, the old way of doing it. And then you look in your search term, you're missing half of them. It's like, I'm getting 50 conversions and it's showing 20 search terms. Where's the rest of them? Or negatives with clicks. It's inconsistent. So Google's not sure what it wants to do with that. I've seen it account to account, but going with the search, I have shown, and I think this is useful. This is kind of a chat GPT AI thing. People say, show me a list of, or I'm looking for this, which people kind of typed it. And I think they can expand it, now something relevant. Show me a list of, gift ideas for a 12-year-old girl or something. People are shopping for family, for friends, or nieces, nephews, whatever it is. And, what are good gift ideas for this man or this woman in this age, people that like this. And it's just kind of give me some ideas. Let's talk. Or I've seen show me Italian restaurants near me. That it's this. It's not a couple of words. They're striking up a conversation with the AI to get the answer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a much faster route to get the answer because you don't know what the answer is. So, and you don't necessarily know what the ideas are, and you prompting the search to give you those ideas. Whereas if you're trying to do that on Google search, you put in you try and find the right keywords to trigger the right search, but you don't often know what the right keywords are to trigger that search. And a good example of that is the presentation you mentioned that I did, PPC Live UK. I was trying to put a timeline together of all these different updates. I was trying to remember, okay, when was the first automated bidding strategy released at Google Ads? So I typed into Google search, And I got a bunch of stuff about when smart bidding was released in 2017, I think it was, but it wasn't the first automated bid strategy. That rules-based bid strategies came way before then. And I couldn't find it. And I just found all I could find was 20 different articles saying the same thing, which obviously was SEO optimized, where people were trying to, get traffic for their websites, trying to go for those topics. But I put it into Bard, I put it into ChatGPT, and I got the answer almost immediately. And then actually I had to fact check it because it got it wrong. It gave me a year, but it gave me the wrong year. And I knew it was the wrong year because it said 2015, and I knew it came out when I first started, which was around 2012, 2013. So I asked it, can you fact check yourself? And it did. Oh, apologies, I read the wrong thing, and it's actually this year. And then I typed that into Google, and then I got the right results from Google search because I knew what the right keywords to trigger that search was then. So it just gives you a much faster route to find the thing you need. I think it's become, certainly the last few years, really frustrating trying to search but not understanding what the right keywords to trigger the right links to give back to you. It just feels like it's a real natural point in time now, an evolution of search, where having that conversation to generate the results you want, it just feels a lot more natural writing it down and having that sort of two-way conversation.
Yeah, and SEOs do their best to connect all that, but a lot of times you can't match the long tail keywords very well, or you can't match a long list of requirements. Yeah, let's say going back to the restaurant thing, you're searching for a restaurant, an Italian restaurant near me that's family friendly, that's quiet, that's family owned, or I don't know, you're just you want some really specific thing, and it's a conversation back and forth, and an SEO could do that and just load up some ridiculously long URL and headline and stuff it in. SEO is not really my thing. I know a little bit, but just kind of ram it into there. But it seems like it'll still, family friendly, but it's not locally owned and operated, or it's not vegan or whatever. It's hard to do a string of keywords to hit all these requirements, where a conversational one, AI is going to read the whole website, and it's like, well, I need family friendly, but I also need vegan, or I also need this, or honestly, and AI can say, well, I've read the entire site, and based on what you just said, this restaurant fits that. Whereas an SEO can't really ram all those keywords together effectively.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. It's no longer only based on one piece of content. It's the entire website, and understanding and making those pieces of the puzzle together to give you an answer. It's far more formal, far more adaptive. I think the way Google have tried to get around it with regular search over the last few years is giving you the options of what other people are searching for. So did you mean this? Did you mean these related keywords? And then it kind of gives you doorways to other searches, and you end up going down a rabbit hole. But yeah, it's about closing that loop. And I think generative search is definitely closing that loop and just giving people time back to people are lazy, right? So people don't want to be spending hours and hours trying to find the right thing with 100 different tabs open, trying to find something. Anything that lessens that load is going to be a winner.
Yeah, and I think that's why people are using ChatGPT a lot. You get a lot of ideas, and it's going to the general public. I actually want to come back to that when ChatGPT makes mistakes, because that happens a lot. It's just scraping the internet. So if there's stupid stuff on the internet, and there is, it's going to a database that's now stupid and gives you stupid answers that are incorrect because it was on the internet somewhere, which does not always mean that it's true. There's not doctors and lawyers and engineers and professionals reading everything on the internet doing a stamp of approval. You buy a domain and publish something, and Google ranks it. That's there's the internet summed up for people that are new. But sorry, kind of got off track there with the internet. It's talking about rabbit hole. But yeah, just going back and forth, and AI finding those answers and finding categories and topics, and we keep talking about restaurants, but more it could also be software, or it could be attorneys, or one that I think, going back to a very specific example that people can take away here in PPC in their accounts. We've seen that home services, that category for PPC, that's fine with this really broad keyword themes and broad match and just load it up, because there's hundreds of different ways to say you need a plumber. And that's you can't really match that to exact match in the headline and everything, plumber near me, affordable plumber, cheap plumber, fast plumber. And you used to load all that up, keyword to ad group. Now it's like you can do a responsive search ad. You can do this thing because there's hundreds of ways, the sink is clogged and this is overflowing and that's broken, how to fix that, which a lot of times they try to fix it and then can't, and then call a plumber. So that's one that we've seen has just gone right into all the AI and automation, and a lot of times done better. That's a really good example of an industry that just went right into themes and having so many different ways to get to the same answer. So I don't know if you've seen some, and that just popped off the top of my head. I mean, have you seen ones that was a good example? I mean, have you seen also good examples and bad examples, that industries that struggle with just load performance max, load up a bunch of broad match and keyword themes, and it's choppy because it's such a specific thing? I mean, have you seen ones that have struggled to switch?
I think the industries that struggle the most with it is the ones that need to be compliant, like legally and financially, in terms of like those standards that are set, like insurance companies and
Yeah.
legal advisors, all that sort of stuff, where there's anything that's slightly weird or slightly wrong with the text, they can get hit with fines and regulatory fines and that sort of stuff. So they're the ones that are really struggling in terms of, getting the right ad copies, and they can't load up RSAs with everything because they're going to get into trouble quite quickly. And they're probably more on the safer side of only using one or two headlines that are pinned, using one or two descriptions for combinations, and try and keep it as low complex as possible. They're the ones that are probably struggling the most in terms of getting that scale and whatnot. But then I guess everyone's in the same boat there, so it doesn't really change in that sense either.
Yeah, I guess one that seems to be doing better. I mean, we've seen it in our accounts. There's a lot of things published. E-commerce is a whole different thing, but that one it's a lot of themes and shopping and in the market and long tail keywords. And again, there's 100 different ways that you might get to buying a particular product, especially B2B. I mean, what have you seen with e-commerce shifting to all the AI and more hands off and just drop in automation?
Yeah, I think that path to scale is definitely become easier with e-commerce. I think Google PPC in general has always lent well to e-commerce, more so than any other industry.
Yeah.
Just the nature of people's buying cycles, that funnels is quite simple from research to purchase. It's fairly short depending on the type of product it is, but most products are fairly short. I guess furniture and big ticket items will still be a longer buying cycle of more of a month or two, but generally e-commerce is within a month. It makes it simpler to build out your accounts accordingly, so your top funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, and splitting those out by the different categories of the products you sell has always been quite simple. Like there's no need to consolidate different categories within the same campaigns, because they are inherently very different types of products, that sort of stuff, in terms of AOVs and whatnot. So I don't think there's any real issues with e-commerce that I've found. I think people have struggled losing control with PMax, with broad match.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say that's probably more traditional PPC marketers who, like myself, started quite a while ago and have been used to having everything broken out and having direct control over everything. But I think those that have taken on the challenge and tried to adopt these new channels and new campaign types, taken on the mindset of, okay, I don't have control over the exact query, the exact ad copy anymore, but I do have control over the data that I'm putting into this platform, and essentially trying to teach the algorithm what is a good conversion versus a bad conversion is the way to win. And I think it's probably easier to do that with e-commerce than it is anything else, because it's quite simple. It's, pound in X amount of revenue back. Understanding, I guess, buying cycles of a customer as well is a little bit more simpler than, say, lead gen, for example. So, loading in margin data, loading in other sort of data that's important to e-com is a lot easier and a lot simpler, and Google's made it easy to do that. So I think certainly if you have access to that sort of data within your business, or an agency has access to that business data to load in, it's become easier and it's become much faster to get to what real profit is. But when you compare it with the likes of B2B and lead gen, that's a much more complex journey and much complex set of data to be able to understand, what is the right life cycle and what's the right metrics to optimize to.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. We had a different video with Michelle Morgan on there. She's co-founder of Paid Media Pros, and they recently launched a course on advanced lead generation, and they were talking about the longer sales cycles and feeding your CRM back into, so it just leads. I mean, you can see that in Google ads and phone calls, but were they qualified? One, did they just have a conversation, or did they show up to the demo or the sales presentation, or even shorter sales cycles? Did they turn, again, going back to home services, we do a lot of those. Did they actually book an appointment and send a tech out to repair something? But feeding that back in, and then B2B going all the way back to getting, how far did they go in a sales cycle? Did they close? Which is very difficult for B2B. That can be 6 months in some industries, and you're going to go all the way back. So she was recommending a lot of times you do it manually just to see, okay, is Google working out? Is LinkedIn working out? How is Facebook? How is, all the performance max, which a lot of times that has problems with lead generation. You have to feed your CRM data back into it. This was a good phone call. This was a bad phone call. So I'll link to that. That one's lead gen heavy and dealing with automation, because we've seen it'll just bombard a really bad term, and you'll get 100 of them, and then the client will come back and say, hey, we're getting trash leads, what's going on? And you found something that Google favored. If you'd add on that other layer saying, hey, this is 100 phone calls, 99 of them were the wrong number, or they hung up, and that's a real easy one to put on there if they're under 1 minute or under 5 minutes. Or, I mean, Google has that right there in their call extension. And then like call tracking metrics we use, or call rail, or whoever, you can put 5 minute minimum, and that will feed back. So you still have to catch the AI, or it'll really favor something stupid, or your own brand, or reviews, or a competitor that you don't want to show for. They're just literally trying to call and log in and reset their password and other junk. But yeah, we dug into that quite a bit. I'll link to that. That's a lead gen one. But as far as e-commerce, more kind of what you're currently in, how does that look as far as, because in that video we did kind of a new breakout of what a campaign would look like. So if you don't mind doing that, a large e-commerce account, how do you build that out now? Because I mean, standard shopping for Performance Max, and then a regular search one, and then a branded only search with Exact. I mean, what people are, even experts with over a decade of experience, will argue over this. I mean, how would you advise people to break out an e-commerce high spend account with what's currently happening? And don't forget demand gen too. Just throw that in there while we're at it.
Yes.
Easy question for you. Real easy question.
Yeah, very super easy. I don't think there's a right answer anymore. They used to be like best practice used to be very simple, and it's like kind of cookie cutter way of building accounts for every ecom account and pretty much any sort of industry as well. But yeah, now it's kind of like everyone has their own different opinions of what works and what doesn't. I think simplicity is key. So I think not overthinking it is important, and I think mirroring the sort of navigation of the website still works, in the sense of let's take a fashion client that sells anything between like shirts, trousers, shoes, jeans, jackets, all that sort of stuff. I think mirroring your campaign structure against navigation still works in that sense, and still makes sense.
Would that be, sorry, just jump on that. Would that be in Performance Max or standard shopping? Your mirror, because standard shopping, you've done that for years. You just mirror that, and it's different campaigns or different ad groups. Are you saying those are a bunch of different Performance Maxes, or a bunch of different standard shoppings?
I've tried doing it. I've tried mirroring it with Performance Max as well. and I'm still learning myself my way into what's working best for it. Initially, when I first started with Performance Max, I tried to break out the ad groups by audience group rather than category, or rather than the assets that I'm using.
Yeah.
And because that's just the way my brain sort of worked in terms of like thinking about, how we run display campaigns back in the day and that sort of stuff. That's kind of the way we do it. And I thought maybe mimicking that would be the right approach, and the performance wasn't great. And I've since learned actually the reason why that doesn't work in the same way is when you select an audience in PMax, it's not that you're targeting that audience specifically, it's just an audience signal. So it's telling Google, this is the audience that you would like, and it will try and go after things that are like that. So it's almost like a lookalike or a similar audience. And because of that, the audiences are actually targeting the same people often, because they overlap across different audience groups that Google are going after. So I tried to mimic a display strategy with that, and it didn't work. So I went back to how I would do it with standard shopping, and breaking out the ad groups, or even the campaigns, depending on volume, by category. And it feels a more natural way of building it, because you can then have the right assets in the right ad groups. You can split out the shopping campaign element of it with the asset groups in exactly the same way as you could with standard shopping. So for me, it still feels like the right way to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you put Performance Max and standard shopping against each other for same product and kind of test it out that way?
Yeah, did initially, yeah. So try and understand, and smart shopping before that, try and do it with both and see what gets the most traction in terms of not just ROAS and efficiency, but also, what's getting more scale, what's Google favoring over the other in terms of that inventory that's out there.
Yeah, makes sense. So that one still translates. You're getting kind of different product categories, with the fashion one, shirts or shoes, or that's going to be split up. And I mean, you can do standard shopping, or you could just drop, shoes, or even particular types of shoes, into your Performance Max and give it the audience signal, and it'll kind of go from there. Or you could do the other one with jackets, and then that's in Performance Max, targeting an audience, and it'll kind of go find who wants to buy these jackets. But with e-commerce, which that's another one. Supposedly the feed only thing is going away, or it already started to, and some accounts shifting that. So I guess kind of how would you adjust with Performance Max, because it's showing everywhere? I mean, how do you adjust that to make sure it's still relevant while kind of blasting it out everywhere for e-commerce? Make sure it's still bringing in sales.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't surprise me if Google stopped the feed only Performance Max. It's almost like a hack in a sense, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're trying to stop that anytime soon, if they're not already, as you mentioned. But it comes down to the data you're putting into the campaign and what you're optimizing to. So if you have like a really loose ROAS target with really loose sort of CPCs that you're prepared to bid on in terms of those max CPCs as well, if that's all kind of like undefined, Google will spray and pay and hit every single Google entity it can that it has available to it to try and get conversions. So I found actually having a much stricter ROAS target, even stricter than I had with standard shopping, it kind of almost, it's an arbitrary number, but around 90% of the queries coming in were coming from shopping versus the other. And you always get a little bit come through display and YouTube, but you don't mind that if the overall ROAS is hitting its goals. And likewise, if you're feeding other data in like margin or whatnot, if you're hitting those numbers, it doesn't matter where you're serving so much. I mean, obviously you need to have an eye on it and understand what's working or isn't. But I think the obsession of, I don't believe display works for performance marketing or YouTube works for performance marketing, and it's more brand heavy. Test those assumptions and understand actually, if you have a goal, are you hitting it overall? Then great. Yes, the ROAS might not be as good on display or YouTube, but it might be actually increasing those funnel of new customers into your brand, and might be driving more sales in the long term. So if your overall goals are being hit, then great, carry on. If not, then that's when the questions need to be asked: are we wasting our money or not?
Yeah, and getting that brand lift, kind of it shows in so many spots, and then people come back and search the brand. So certainly, if you're doing branded traffic, which there's no absolute, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but you'll see the brand traffic will spike significantly, and that's that YouTube, that display that doesn't really seem like it's doing anything. Has zero sales or a tiny bit, almost to the point where you want to cut it off. But it's like, well, all these other touch points are lifted, and you can connect the two. And Performance Max is supposed to be a full funnel thing, to where it has all these different touch points, and then it gets them in search, or it gets them with repeat visitors, and it kind of takes over remarketing and that sort of thing. So if it overall is hitting the ROAS numbers, you can say, well, yeah, you don't want to block out YouTube and display and all that, because they all work together.
Yeah, and I find so demand gen, I still call it discovery. My campaigns have really just upgraded to demand gen recently, but I found that as a kind of halfway house between top of funnel to bottom of funnel. It's definitely more mid funnel, certainly for the brand I work for, and it's because of the way that I'm using it. So just to give you a bit of context, so the company I work for is a company called ufurnish.com, which is what you'd call an aggregator for furniture. So it's a comparison website for furniture. So when it comes to bidding on PPC, we only make a very small sort of commission on sales from traffic we relay to retailer websites, where someone might purchase from an IKEA, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They would go to their website having found their product on ours, but we'll still make the purchase on IKEA's website, and then we'll make 4% commission on that sale. Because of that, we can't afford to pay as much on PPC advertising as IKEA or other retailers for the same queries. So they could pay £4, £5, £6 per click to feature in the top of the results. Whereas for us, for it to be profitable, we'd only be able to pay 20 to 30p. And because of that, we are never top of the listings for PPC keywords for any of them, really. We're just kind of sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel in that sense. But what demand gen has allowed us to do is actually create custom audiences of people who've searched those really high sort of, short tail keywords that are really expensive, create audiences off the back of that. And those same people have made those searches, hit them with their Gmail accounts, or on YouTube, or on it's Gmail, YouTube, and there's a third.
Discovery. Or it was called that, but it's the feed while you're scrolling through kind of news articles and stuff you would be interested in.
So it's people that have searched for those terms in recent times, so they're super relevant and actually very much in market, and just reaching them in a slightly different way. But it's a completely different network in that sense. And in the past, you might think, well, if they're not actually searched for it on Google and clicked on it, then you're not going to get the right person and in the right sort of intent mode. But here, it works really well, and it's allowed us to reach those audiences at scale, which we weren't able to do in Google search, because we can't afford to pay £4 a click, and we're only having to pay 20 to 30, 40p, but still reach that person right in their app, essentially.
Yeah, and that's one way, of adapting that a lot of PPC professionals can use, especially with these larger purchases and longer sales cycle. It doesn't have to be the perfect keyword, where you used to, single keyword AdWords, those are very dead. Let's just end those, that skags. Those are very gone. But, you used to do tons of exact match and all these different ad groups. And I want this exact keyword that I know works. Now, you really can't even do that because multiple close variant updates, it's going to show for plurals. You even look at exact match search terms, it's a bunch of different search terms. It doesn't even work on exact. So going with this theme and what people have searched for and a range of keywords, or going cheap on not google.com searches, it's like, yes, the conversion rate percentage is lower, but you go for the longer game of, maybe the CPA is the same or lower for lead gen, or the ROAS is the same. Maybe you got 800 clicks and they were 20 cents each, and then you calculate all the way in, the ROAS is still good. The cost per order is still good. You just get this yeah, a lot of them, they accidentally clicked on an app, or they were scrolling through YouTube on the phone and they hit the ad, which is right under the video as you scroll. That's very sneaky, but people hit it. You're going to get a bunch of that, and you're going to get a bunch of junk, but it's so incredibly cheap. You can pump in that volume, and in the end, quality leads, or your ROAS, if they're the same or better, you can use these other things, this performance max and now demand gen or display, and learn how to use them, because the end goal is the same. You don't have to focus on your favorite keywords anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's a mindset shift. I think it's taken me a while. It's taken me the best part of a year to get my head around, what's the right way of trying to reach our customers and reach our business goals using Google's, I guess, entities. Yeah, the old way of thinking, as you said, skags are dead, but just the old way of thinking is dead as well. I think you have to really think about how you're using your data, how you're using the different options that are available to you in Google, and how you match those things together to get the right results for the business.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Google Ads specialists, I think it would be beneficial to learn other platforms, because a lot of people are really strict on Google, and things have changed so much. I mean, we know Facebook as well, and I've had a lot of experience with Facebook and display, and Taboola and Outbrain and these other tiny, which if you're not familiar, those ones on news websites, it shows up, it looks like an article, but it's not. It's a product. So there's a lot of different things. Or getting into YouTube, which behaves pretty much the same as display. Or I'd encourage a lot of people to get into Facebook. Then you're forced into kind of, what are you currently shopping for? What are you interested in? What are your demographics? What even now they have kind of a performance max. Just drop in signals. That's pretty much brand new. You drop in a signal and it'll kind of go from there, which maybe, I don't know, for Facebook. But jumping into Facebook, then it's like, translate that into Google Ads, because it's becoming similar. It's not, this is my favorite exact match or my 10 that I put in the account and crank up the manual bid and it's profitable. It's no, follow the people through the whole cycle. So if you know Facebook ads, you don't have keywords. You have to figure it out, and you have to trust the automation a lot. It veers off from whatever you showed it. And same thing with Facebook. You don't really do that. I want news feed only, or block right side, or block marketplace, or audience network, or whatever it is. Just do the Advantage Plus. They're new to Advantage Plus placements, Advantage Plus audiences, Advantage Plus everything. In e-commerce especially, you can drop in Advantage Plus, and that's that carousel ad where you just scroll forever and it shows all the products, and you could drop in categories. I think people that are only Google should learn other ones, because Google is starting to act like that too.
Yeah, 100%. And I've found a lot of success actually mimicking the way we run Facebook ads with what we're doing with demand gen, in terms of creatives we're using and the messaging that we're using. There's a lot of similarities in terms of the mindset that consumers are in on those platforms. So yeah, taking those learnings from different platforms and bringing that into Google, definitely, just understanding how platforms work definitely helps. I think another one as well, and I think people are going to look at more and more, is Reddit advertising and Quora advertising, because a lot of the changes in SEO, some of the recent updates, like the helpful content updates, have started to really favor Reddit and forums, and I guess user generated content and user generated advice is so trustworthy, and those signals are so trustworthy. It's really propelled those platforms on Google in terms of organic search. So more and more people are tagging on Reddit to their searches to try and get to there even faster, because they're going to get a better answer than they would on Google search. So that's an opportunity people should be looking at, is, how do I, if you're stuck for scale and whatnot, I think looking at advertising opportunities there, and even on organic as well, in terms of how do I get into the conversation in those platforms in a natural way too, is important. So yeah, diversifying beyond Google's going to become even more important, because we don't know what it's going to look like. I think Google have probably got a little bit scared in terms of how fast OpenAI and Microsoft are taking ChatGPT and the different knock-on add-ons and applications that are being built by by these algorithms. They're going at a much faster rate at the moment than Google seem to be. So who knows in 2-3 years time what the landscape is going to look like. So I think diversifying is going to be super important.
Yeah, and I think you're almost forced to do that. And there's a lot of the niche industries that seem to shift. Facebook only is a very popular one. One, because I think it's just easy. My personal opinion, it doesn't take that long to learn. Google only, that would be a big shift. Solutions 8, they're huge. A lot of great content, but they were even talking about it themselves. Like, how long can you be a Google only agency, or even one really specific one, the micro agencies, Google ads for plumbers or something, which is really easy to scale and cold call. And I get the program, and a lot of people sell that program. I think that was Ty Lopez originally, but all that took off, making these, we run ads on Google for this one very specific business, and you could scale, but it's like, how long is that going to run for? And that, when do you want to crisscross into other platforms and expand? Because we prefer to have clients on multiple ones, because when Google's tanking, we'll go to Facebook, and then Facebook has a good quarter, then they're tanking, we'll go over to Microsoft ads, which everyone forgets about. Very cheap, and it's like we're getting 12x ROAS on Microsoft ads. It's like, yes, it's a teeny tiny volume, but most of the time you can't beat those numbers, and they just mimic Google anyway. So anyone on your team or yourself, the interface is pretty much the same. Import, and remember to actually optimize. Don't just do the auto import. That's a terrible idea. Import it to start and then optimize it. So yeah, the multiple platforms I think is critical for in-house, freelance, agency, wherever you're at. You should shift to multiple platforms.
Yeah, for sure. I think, if you put all your eggs into one basket, whether it's Google or Facebook, and say Facebook suspends you for an innocuous reason,
yeah,
down for a few weeks, which happens really often. I hear it all the time, and it takes a long time to get it back online again, even if you didn't actually do anything wrong. That can completely, especially if you're a smaller business, that could really ruin what you're doing. So yeah, diversifying just to mitigate that risk. Is just that alone is a good enough reason to do it, I think.
Yeah, and you're saying, you never know where it's going to end up in a few years. There will always be advertising. When VR, you put your thing on and it's going to show you an ad, and then you hit skip, then go into your actual VR. Augmented reality, I think that was Minority Report, or it's actually an old movie now. They were walking around and the holograms had different ads they would scan their face and customize an ad to them. It's like, I wouldn't put that past the real world. Whatever's coming, it's going to have ads in it. That's just the way it is. We just have to adjust. But I like that you mentioned Reddit and Quora. That's kind of where the AI is going. People ironically will Google something and put Reddit at the end of it, because I want a conversation. You see the thread on Quora and Reddit, and they're pushing their ads really hard. If you're on Facebook or anywhere, or LinkedIn, it says you should run Reddit ads. It's like, you know what, I should, because you see, I like seeing that too. You see a thread, I'm looking for this thing, and someone else posted it. There's 30 different answers. There's upvotes, and it's like, well, what software is good for this? Well, I use this, and my company did this. I would prefer that. Or what furniture, what restaurant? It's a long discussion, and you can talk back to it. It's like, this wasn't quite the answer I was looking for. I'll post it and then watch the community, or eventually AI is trying to answer you too. You want to go back and forth, where matching the keyword you typed to a keyword that's on a page and a bunch of other external links that people sold on PBNs, maybe that's not the best answer anymore. Sorry, SEOs. It's that conversational one that people want now.
Yeah, and all these review systems, like third-party reviews as well as reviews on websites, no one really trusts those anymore. There's been so many spammy ones and ones where people have just faked it, that people lost trust in that. And that's another reason why they're going to Reddit, because they're getting real people's views. And that upvote system gives them that confidence that actually this is backed by real people as well.
Yeah, and it's harder to manipulate. I mean, you can buy anything on the internet, but having a whole team upvote things and communicate and put the best answer all over Reddit, it's like, I mean, maybe, but it's a lot less likely than just buying Google reviews, buying someone to record a testimonial video, which I unfortunately seen that people will just do it. Those things are much, much harder to manipulate. And Reddit and Quora have some things built in to where you can't just, hire a VA to go in there and say, this is the best product. And they just posted 100 different Reddit conversations. It won't get upvoted. It's the same person that recommends the same product and 100 different subreddits. They'll probably just get banned, actually.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think multi-platform's good, shifting around, adjusting to kind of the new things and watching it. I mean, what else do you think people should be doing with how things are changing now? Because they're drastically changing.
Yeah, I keep mentioning mindset shift, but I think it's super important in terms of how you're analyzing your own data, whether it's Google, Facebook, or whatever, but especially Google with the way it's going in terms of automation, or where it's already gone, is just understanding what's happening with the data. Like you mentioned before about with lead gen, and if you just set it and it doesn't know what a good lead is versus a bad lead, it could bring 99 bad leads out of 100 that it gives you. And initially when you see 100 leads come in, you think, oh, this is great, this is working fantastically. And then when you get the feedback from the business that these leads were terrible, then you think, okay, Google's terrible and it just doesn't work. PPC doesn't work for my business, and you end up switching it off or going another route with a different platform. So just, if that's the attitude you take, you're never going to succeed in this space. Try and understand and think a little bit deeper in terms of, okay, why hasn't this worked? What can I do to make this better? So how can I make the algorithm better? How can I give it the information it needs to understand things better? And sometimes Google will give you the tools to be able to do that with like uploading like offline conversions or integrations that it has with lead gen or platforms or B2B platforms that you might use, or CRM and whatnot. But sometimes it doesn't have those tools, and understanding how can you find another way to get that in is going to be an important skill set to have. Always questioning why and how can I do this? How can I do that? So yeah, being able to just understand what data I put in, what's working, what isn't, what's the right, I guess, medicine I need to make this better. And then, as I said before, just understanding how to feed the algorithm in the best way possible is what people need to be focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to watch machines almost like a factory. They still have human beings in them watching the machines. They break, they do stupid things, they need to be repaired. You have to pause the assembly line of machines when something's a little bit off. So it's almost like that analogy that, yes, we have a ton of automation and AI, but it needs to be heavily watched and trained and paused and restarted and repaired by human beings. I don't think we're anywhere near you can just drop it in and the Matrix or Skynet or whatever that you want to take from a movie can do it. It's really stupid right now, and it needs an assistant, just like an actual computer or a car or factory, whatever analogy you want to use. It helps humans, and it takes a lot of work and calculation off of us, but we still need to steer it and control it and keep an eye on it. And I think that's the disconnect, and that's where everyone gets frustrated. Google is pushing it as set it and forget it, and that's horribly inaccurate. And then the Google reps and the call centers, the bad ones, they're not all bad, but a lot of them are bad, and say, hey, turn on auto apply recommendation. The magic AI just works, and the robots are smarter than it's like, no one's buying this pitch. It's software, it's computers, it's all these other things that help humans and make our jobs easier, and a lot of great tools. It's amazing, but humans just have to learn the tools and adjust the mindset. You have all this stuff to work with now rather than manually doing all of it. And that's the biggest shift we need to do, and just learn all this AI and how to feed it the right info.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, with the auto apply recommendations, I think the idea of setting them all on is wrong. And I think the idea of not using them at all is also wrong. There are certain auto apply recommendations you can use, which are fine, certainly not all of them, but it all comes down to context. And that's where humans are needed, is to provide them and understand what the context is. So for example, auto applying audiences to your campaigns where they don't have them, great. I want all of my audiences and all the campaigns regardless. The ones I observe and feeding search algorithms. But adding in all the broad keywords that we think are right for your business is probably not a recommendation you want to auto apply.
No, you can get ideas.
Ideas. Give me the ideas and I'll set the ones I think are good and right for my business. But don't also apply those, because I understand the context better than you do at this point in time, unless you get to a point where you are able to feed Google with all the relevant context of your business. But I don't think you will ever get to that place where it will 100% understand everything you're doing and why you're doing it. The idea is to get it as high as you can in that sense, but it will never be 100% accurate. So understanding what needs context, what needs human context, and what doesn't is also important.
I saw
someone at the front door.
Google Home telling me that someone at the door is up.
Oh yeah, see, there's some more automation. But yeah, I saw one example given. The words are so close to AI, it can't tell the difference, but to a human, they're completely different things. An example was milk chocolate and chocolate milk. Those are two completely different things. And AI said, well, it's two of the same words. It's like when you rearrange them, they're very different. So I think it can't figure out things like that, or it goes in the wrong direction, or talking about we're talking about multiple platforms and things like that. One thing, a lot of people have gone to third-party reporting that arguably is a lot more powerful than Google Analytics. And there's a lot of frustration with GA4. I personally think it was developed more so just by coders and technical people, and then dropped to the public, and they say, oh, this is really easy, just drop in your regex and this and all that. It's like, this is actually very complicated to non-coders. I don't understand, where do I just pull up regular numbers? They didn't translate it very well to the common user. Even though it is very advanced, it's very difficult to use. I think that's where the big issue is, and I hope they fix that with GA4. Personally think it's a mess, but a lot of things, you've got Hyros and Triple Whale, and there's probably some other ones, the third party, that dig in, and they're actually more accurate. They're the way they track it, don't know all the technology, but people will layer that on top. And when you have big spenders, and when you have a lot of different platforms, a lot of different touch points, longer sales cycle, people are going to that third party tracking to get much more accurate data and get, a 20 or 30% boost, because it's more accurate in calculating ROAS and attribution and things like that. So I don't know if you're seeing kind of some of that as well, shifting over to third party or GA4. I don't know, kind of what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's I think a lot of people, and myself included in that, in terms of, when it comes to optimizing, you want to get as close, think of Google specifically, you want to get as close to using Google's tools and algorithms to do that, because it has access to, auction time bidding and all those signals behind it that it doesn't surface to you. So that's kind of like, especially in the last few years, people have moved away from third-party bidding platforms towards Google Ads and being native in the platform to do that sort of stuff. But when it comes to actual reporting of what's happening and what the impact is on the business, the Google tools, as you mentioned, are just not fit for purpose at this point in time. So a lot of people use things like Tableau and try and ingest as much data as possible and have their own data warehouses where they can get all their business data in one place and match that with the advertising platforms, and then do the reporting outside of Google. But then being able to use that and feed that back into Google itself, but using Google's algorithm to optimize to is the name of the game, I think.
Yeah, and other platforms are doing that too. You can feed it into Facebook, you can feed it into other ones to get kind of import. And they've had that for a while, but now it's more critical, with CRMs or Shopify or whatever you're connecting. Make all the different systems talk to each other rather than just a simple pixel the way it was, or conversion APIs and all these other things to connect that. Make the APIs talk and get the full picture. I think is more critical than ever. And again, the AI and automation can all work together with each other and make it better. So if you adjust correctly and shift that mindset to use the new tools rather than ignore them, because Google or Facebook or whoever is really forcing you to shift. And some of them literally you can't use anymore, and other ones don't work as well. So I think it's really just a mindset shift and just constantly learning faster than we ever have to learn the new tools and learn them quickly.
Yeah, it's funny. It's Google always, when they bring these updates out, they try and nudge you towards it initially, but then eventually, if they don't see people adopting it so fast, they put hard deadlines on it. So you have to do it by this time.
Yeah,
So,
and then everyone panics.
yeah.
GA4 that just happened, and that was such a panic at last minute, and then everybody's releasing how to migrate and all this stuff just flooding. Whereas you had like a year. It was a long time to shift, but nobody wanted to. It all happened. I think that was June or July 1st or whenever it was. It was this panic. Everyone waiting until the last minute. Or people didn't switch, and then Google said, okay, we'll run the data for a month or two, and then it's cut off. Everything says 0. It's like, okay, you really need to switch now. You have no data. So just things like that, or extended text ads, or RSAs not being favored if they're pinned, supposedly, just kind of nudging things like that. I think shifting to, you could see sometimes the automated bidding will work a lot better than manual. It will just take off, and the AI or automated bidding is smarter than you, and you can't really nudge all your automated or your manual bidding all day with keywords and ad groups and all this other stuff like you used to. So yeah, just a lot of changes, ton of stuff. Anyway, I know we're getting kind of late here, so thanks so much for coming on and explain everything. A lot of really good takeaways for shifting. So just anything else you wanted to add or plug kind of before we go and drop any links in the description for you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of already plugged the business I work for, so youfurnish.com. So yeah, if you're in the UK and you're looking for furniture, it's one place where you can find that rather than opening up 100 different tabs on Google. So that's my little plug. But yeah, I think in terms of takeaways, I think one of the underrated things over the last 10 years, and it's still underrated now, is testing. But I don't think people use Google Ads experiments enough by any means. It's still very much an untouched tool for a lot of people. So I think now more important than ever, because you don't have as much insight in terms of what Google surfaces to you, testing those assumptions and testing everything you're doing using the tools available to you or other tools that are out there is probably where you're going to make your incremental gains, other than the stuff we've discussed previously. So that's probably my closing thought.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and going to multi-platforms, I mean, Facebook has it too. They have their kind of own version of experiments, and I don't know Reddit and Quora as well. I think the takeaway is try them. Let's all try them and learn it. That would be huge. And then, yeah, so just keep testing, trying new things. Don't be stubborn. Don't be that PPC sticking to your single keyword ad groups forever. Just let it go. Try some performance max if it makes sense and performs, otherwise turn it off. But yeah, a lot of good takeaways, so thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching our PPC ads training video. If you want more videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Like this video if you found it useful, and any questions, post them in the comments down below. We also have additional training in the description. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.